Hello. So I did my first project on my first artist on Todd Shore. He's an American artist. He was born on January 9th, 1954 in New York, New York. He studied at the Philadelphia College of Art, currently renamed the University of Arts. His main art form is painting, but he started off in illustration, so there's some elements of that in his works. He was a big part in the what's called the brow or pop surrealism movement. Now, his first painting is called "The Last Polar Expedition of Commander Peary," 2012. Now, in a lot of you'll see in a lot of works, Todd Shore does a lot of depictions of like sort of what's going on in our global climate. A lot of things about global warming, things of like the oil crisis, how we depend on oil. Like in this particular work, you see it's the last expedition to the north because it's melting. You can see an overflow of water around, and the snow monster there, the little character there, is the snow creeping up on us while we're not suspecting it, and the red clouds around depicting the heat melting the snow. But what I find interesting about his works is it's very 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 it's like a scene, like he's trying to capture like a large scene, like he's trying to get us to be really involved, and there's a lot of detail in his works. um it's a lot of depth and a lot of just a lot of detail inside. That's why I really like it. What really captured me to Todd Shore. Now this one in Ape Workshop, um what I find interesting about this one is Todd Shore is kind of a I guess you could say a slave to nostalgia. I would say, not a bad way, but he's really influenced his creative idea and philosophy are really, you can really tell they come from his childhood when he speaks about his work. Like this particular one, he's a huge fan of King Kong. Um, when he was a kid, he was a huge fan, and it was really his first interest was the stop motion film of King Kong. And here it's a bunch of different versions of King Kong and different styles and times. Like the largest King Kong to the sort of center right, he says that one's from when the Chinese theater, when it first came out, it was a giant. Or no, I'm sorry, the in Las Vegas, I think it was a giant statue of King Kong. And but really, and another thing is his works are very very big, just very big. He describes it as he's trying to like encapsulate you into a world, into a setting, like just envelop you inside of it, and you can really tell he's trying to, because you just get sucked in every single detail, every single place you look, there's a new thing to see, and it's really quite interesting. Now this one is called "No Solar Power for Fairyland Color Study." This one is going back to the first image, how through these sort of cartoonish and outlandish worlds and scenes he creates, is really is trying to reflect our world, and how we're kind of um, oblivious to these things, and we kind of let it happen. How it's all fun and good, but behind the scenes is something really tragic happening. See, in this one again, it's a giant scene trying to really encapsulate you into his, and trying to really bring you inside his painting, not just let you see it, but like try to bring you inside of it, which I find quite interesting. and it sure does get me. Um, Another thing I find interesting and that really captivates is the king and the little fairy there. You see those characters a lot in his works. I think the king is supposed to represent sort of our ideology of rulers, and how sometimes our faith in them can be misplaced, and how they can be sometimes very shady. It's just very just from a technical standpoint, the level of detail and shading, and he says he starts with very rough sketches, and he just slowly surely details, and then he creates a final picture and just puts all his energy and efforts into that, which I find very very interesting, the way he thinks about each work. Now this one's called Neverlasting Miracles. This goes back again to his love of his very inspiration of when he was a child. There's a lot of cartoon characters in his works to really convey his messages and what he likes, which I find extremely fascinating. This In this image, you see a figure talking to Peter Pan, and I would assume it's sort of maybe Father Time, or maybe death. I would say leaning on more on death because of the uh, the scythe, and he's showing Peter Pan the hourglass, and he's showing that it's running out, and Peter Pan's pondering. Now I find the skeleton in the back and the fountain with the conquistador outfit interesting, because I remember there's a lot of collections he created, and he described that they're very end of the world, global catastrophe inspired. Around this time, the myth of the idea of 2012, how the Mayans predicted the end of the world. These things are all we found these things very fascinating. He's a very he's very global warming is out, is going to end the world, and we need to do something about it. And he shows it and conveys it through these very interesting and characters and scenes that really capture in a very in a very true sense. And that's but just the level of detail he puts in his works and the effort is just very I find very impressive, and I just find so fascinating. It's just and I really appreciate how much depth he creates, and how much vibrant colors, and just how elaborate these characters and scenes are. Like, they're just so wild, and I wish I knew what went on in his head. It was just so interesting how these come out of his mind and onto canvas. Now the next artist we'll be looking at is Maurits Cornelius Escher. I hope I'm saying that right. He was a Dutch graphic artist. He was born on June 17th, 1898 in Leeuwarden, Netherlands, and he died March 27th, 1972 at Laren, Netherlands. He studied at the Delft University of Technology, and his medium was woodcuts, lithographs, mezzotints, drawings, and printmakings. Now, Mr. Escher is a very interesting man, and kind of I would say a very kind of tragic artist, in my opinion. He didn't really get the fame I think he deserved, in my opinion, and until very late in his life. He got his first exhibit, and I find his works very brilliant. And lots. He combined mathematics with art, with mathematical precision, And what I love most about his art is how he creates he creates a conveys three-dimensional space in a two-dimensional format, and it's very insane. Like these characters in this particular work, Encounter 1944, they feel very alive. And another thing I love about his work is how mesmerizing they can be. Like you could see in the very back, the characters come together or come back into a pattern, and then you could see them slowly transition into a three-dimensional space out of a two-dimensional space, and coming back and appear to go back to it in the front. And it's very, there's a lot of detail you wouldn't notice because it's very there's a lot of black and a lot of white and a lot of gray, and you wouldn't really notice it, but the more you look, like the shadows and the circle within the pattern going down and slowly fading away is very, very fascinating and very mesmerizing. Next work is Belvedere, 1958. Now, in this one, I think this really conveys his mathematical precision, in the sense that I like the way he conveys this building. It's to create a very symmetrical, stable building. You need a lot of you need math, and this one I think conveys that mathematical part of him for whatever reason. I just feel that way. I think it might be the angularness of a lot of geometric shapes of this building, but it's very interesting. The people sitting on there. It's very, very calming tones for me personally. How the gray, lots of heavy grays with the whites. Not a lot of black in this, but he creates a lot of depth. You don't really notice at first. You like and there's just a lot of things you can get lost. You don't really see at first, and that's what I really like about his work, is you get really lost in his works. Just like Todd Shore, you see a lot of things you didn't see before the more you look, and it really just invites you into the image. Now this next one is Sky and Water 1 BO306. Now this is a woodcut printed in black. This is more what you would see from his pattern like styles, how they kind of combine and flow into each other. And it's very mesmerizing seeing the transition between the fish in the bottom and the ducks up top, vice versa. It's very, very entrancing and very very strange just how he was able to do this, with just precision. And it's very fascinating how it just goes from fish to slowly transitioning into white, into a pattern that forms the bottom of the duck. And it's just very interesting. Now this one, Femora of Stilo, Calabrias, 1930. Now this one is interesting because in my opinion, it doesn't have a lot of like the second building with previous architectural Belvedere paint scene. This one it feels more loose, more free-handed, less precision, but not necessarily in a bad way. It just feels he was having it feels more relaxed that way. It's not trying too hard. It's not stiff. It flows very, very nicely. But I love just how many just value is in this is insane. How some of the blacks aren't even, they might seem like black, but they're really just a really dark gray that's just over the edge of black, and just creates this very calming sort of very gray feeling scene overlooking his this scene, which he does dabble in color, and his color works are good as well. But there's something about the way he uses black and gray and white that particularly, yeah, just how it really, how he saw it is very interesting. His design philosophy using these three colors or values, it's just very interesting to me. And it really just shows me how just how far you can push it. You know, these guys have very different ideas of, you know, creating art, but yet they achieve what they want, their goals, in both fulfilling ways. And that's why I chose these two artists. Thanks for listening. I hope the quality isn't too bad. It's my first time ever recording anything. Thank you for listening, Professor, and stay safe, and hope to see you soon. Bye.